is a little special person. He's not from the medical fraternity as usual, but he's a man behind the curtains. He is Mr. Arun Shirsagar. He is the director of the Garware Institute of Career Development and Education. He finished his BSc and BE in Electrical Engineering from the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, and then did his MBA from Bajaj Institute of Management. He worked in Philips and then as the Vice President of Orange, and finally joined the Garware Institute to head the same. He has been instrumental in starting various courses, especially those linked with hospitals, like the postgraduate diploma in pharma management and hospital management and healthcare. And moreover, he has been the planner for the management software for all big hospitals like Bombay Hospital and Jaslok Hospital. For those who are not so computer savvy, he facilitates doctors to use the computer and software. So we are very grateful to Mr. Arun Shirsagar to spare his time on this Sunday morning for our Sanjeevani program. I would request our director, Dr. Ajay Sankhe, to please hand over a bouquet to our chief guest. We are also blessed today with the presence of Her Grace Nartaki Mataji. Nartaki Mataji is a very senior disciple of Srila Prabhupada. She was initially a nurse in Germany, and after meeting Srila Prabhupada, she decided to dedicate her life for the preaching of the Bhagavad Gita and spiritual life. So we are very grateful to have her here for the morning. Before we wouldn't take much more time, just to introduce, last time we had the Sanjeevani program where we introduced the topic going beyond the 8 walls. So today we'll have the next session, part 2 of going beyond the 8 walls. Our speaker, His Grace Gaurang Das. We all know him very well for the past 5 Sanjeevani programs. For those who have come in new, he is B.Tech from IIT, passed out in 1992. In 1994, he dedicated his life to preaching the message of the Bhagavad Gita. He preaches extensively to the youth, and he is known for his mesmerizing lectures and attracting huge crowds, not only in Mumbai, India, but all over the world. He conducts Bhagavad Gita classes and stress management courses in various institutes like IIT Mumbai, Grand Medical College, and also abroad in universities like Massachusetts University. So with this brief introduction, I would like to invite His Grace Gaurang Das to start the lecture for the day.
ओम अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो ओम विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे।
I would request Dr. Girish Rathod to please garland our speaker.
Very good morning to all the assembled guests. A hearty welcome to Mr. Shirsagar and the esteemed doctors of Bhaktivedanta Hospital, other distinguished doctors, guests, ladies and gentlemen. So we are continuing with this theme of trying to understand what makes a human being inquire about the conditions of suffering which he goes through. The point we discussed in the last session was there are three characteristics which makes a human being understand that he has to take recourse to some higher shelter. All of us, we are trying to experience happiness, peace, joy, but we find repeated frustration in our attempts to do so. And therefore, the reason which the Bhagavad Gita provides is that human being is different from an animal. So because the human being is different from an animal, then there is a higher responsibility. And the whole session we discussed last time was when the human being tries to imitate the activities of an animal, then we experience greater suffering. So that was A. And the second principle was B, and B refers to body. I am not the body, I am the spirit soul. And that is going to be the topic of discussion primarily today, that we have to make this attempt to go beyond these 8 walls of this material universe, of this body, because ultimately, in essence, our identity is we are not the body, we are the soul. So let us see this example of car and driver. So when a driver is sitting in a car, then the car is the vehicle, and the person sitting within the vehicle has the power to maneuver the vehicle. As long as the driver is sitting within the car moves. And as soon as the driver steps out, the car stops. So Bhagavad Gita is in essence presenting this very simple principle about the essence of life. This has been an interesting question for philosophers, theologians, even doctors for many, many decades as to where does the spark of life begin. So science deals with 4 principles: observation, hypothesis, experiment and result. So therefore most people consider Gita to be some kind of a sentimental mumbo jumbo meant for grandmas. But as I described before, Gita deals with spiritual technology. Gita deals with spiritual science. And therefore any body of knowledge which follows the epistemology of observation, hypothesis, experiment and result has to be under the purview of science. So if we can prove that through the Bhagavad Gita, the principles and the premise and the hypothesis which Gita puts forward is experimentally verifiable and results can be concurred, then that would mean that this is like a science. Therefore, as a scientist, I am expected to be open-minded. I can call a book Bhagavad Gita, I can call it fairy tales, I can call it Jack's tale of travels all over the world, whatever may be the name of the book. But if that book and the subject matter within the book follows this principle of observation, hypothesis, experiment and result, I have to accept that it is a science. Whether my previously acquired dogma allows me to accept it or not, that's a different question. But if these 4 principles are there, then even if I don't want to accept it, if I am scientific minded, I will have to accept it. So that is the whole principle of the Bhagavad Gita being a science. So just imagine that there is a dead body So we are just giving different examples to see in very basic, very simple, commonplace examples. That as medical students, the students enter into an anatomy hall and they see dead bodies. So they don't expect the dead bodies to react. They don't expect the dead bodies to sit up and acknowledge their coming in. Because they know that the body is dead. So when we say there is a living body, he shows certain symptoms, and there is a dead body. So I observe there are differences in both the bodies. And as doctors, all of you know, there are certain symptoms by which you can immediately identify that the person is dead. So based on this observation, my hypothesis is living body minus dead body is equal to soul. That means it is that soul or Atma, or you can call it any name. You can call it alpha, beta, gamma. If that sounds cool, that is also okay. But the whole idea is there is this spark which is making the body move. And that's my hypothesis. And hypothesis means I can put forward any hypothesis as long as I have the proper experimental apparatus and I can show with results. So my hypothesis is body is running because of the presence of the soul. Full stop. That is what the Gita's hypothesis is. So if I am asked an opinion, I can say body is moving because of combination of chemicals. Someone else can say body is moving because of energy. Someone else can say body is moving because all air waves all around and air waves within, that is keeping the body moving. Body is moving because of the pav bhaji I am eating in the morning. It could be any hypothesis, because as an individual, it is my birthright to throw opinions. How valid or how bogus my opinions are, that is a different question. But to have opinion is the characteristic symptom of an individual. So as an individual, I have opinions, but still the difference between individual sporadic opinion and authorized opinion is that authorized opinion follows certain principles which are already known, experimented upon, and which work. And therefore when we discuss any field, we refer to authority, we refer to authorization. And therefore in medical field there is Indian Medical Council, and that is the authorized body which sets certain standards. Otherwise any upstart can come up and start claiming that I am going to cure people, or that is not acceptable. So similarly, just as in medical fraternity, there is a certain principle of following certain books and certain practices, and people come under a certain umbrella and agree to be disciplined under that. Similarly, theology is also a very sacred, powerful science, and there are certain basic principles which guide this field. And Gita discusses this in great detail, and it behooves an intelligent observer to try to understand the principles described in the Gita, so he is able to get a hang of what exactly is this whole body and soul business. So therefore, I say that that what makes the body move is the soul. That's my hypothesis. That's fine. Now, let us try to see some other commonplace examples which will help us testify this hypothesis, or which adds weight to this hypothesis, and that's called use of observation powers or logic in our day-to-day activities. Like this camera is observing me, and all of you are observing me. The camera is simply recording events. When you are observing me, you are not just recording events, you are also processing the event, and you are going through certain range of emotions and experiences. So your observation of the speaker and hearing of the lecture is not just a mechanical recording of event as in the case of this contraption. Therefore, what makes an individual human being go through a certain experience? Your ears are open, your eyes are open, I am speaking, Every word is creating a certain impact, a certain emotion, certain feelings. And then in future, you will look back on this event and even remember certain things which happened and certain emotions you were going through. It is an event which is recorded for posterity in your memory. But that recording of this event in your memory is not the same as the recording of this event in this cassette. It is much different. Therefore, that experience you are going through indicates that there is someone who is experiencing it. It is not just because the eyes and the ears are open. When the body is dead, the person is clinically dead, the eyes are open, the ears are open. But does the dead body hear? Can the dead body see? You may know all the principles of the visual pathway, but the light rays falling upon the eyes is not the only requirement for vision to take place. Because the light rays falling upon the eyes ultimately have to be received somewhere by someone. And therefore, the person who is supposed to see, if he is missing, then therefore there is no experience. So therefore a dead body you will see is just lying, eyes are open, ears are open, but there is no expression, there is no emotion, there is no response, because we understand that there is someone within, different from the body, who is actually at the receiving end of all of these experiences. Intuitively we know these things, because the way we respond, speak, behave and exchange information, it reveals our understanding of this at an intuitive level, but we have never given an in-depth logical analytical understanding of this, and therefore we have never systematically tried to understand the difference in this concept of body and soul. Or for example, an example of our intuitive understanding of this concept is, we often say, this is my hand. That means I distinguish the hand from myself. I say my head, my chest, my leg. So that means every part of your body at a gross level you are separating from yourself as an identity. And then you may say, then maybe I am the intelligence, but I say my intelligence. My intelligence is not working properly. I could not write the paper because my intelligence was blocked. Or you may say, then maybe it is the mind. Then you say, my mind is disturbed. So even at the level of the mind, you are separating. We are separating ourselves from the mind. When an idea clicks, I don't say it is, I am the idea. I say it is my idea. So even from the point of view of mind and intelligence, which are subtle entities, I am separating myself. So in this way, the essence of who I am is revealed in the Gita. And Krishna says, Dehinosmin yatha dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara tatha dehantara praptir dhiras tatra na muhyati. So small child is there, child is born, child is extremely small, the child grows bigger. So the mother has great affection and love for the child. The child becomes a 20-year-old boy or girl, mother has the same love. The child becomes 40-year-old man or woman, mother has the same affection. Now my question is the person the same all through? Now anatomically, physically, the person has transformed completely. Size is different, shape is different, features are different, weight is different. So if you see the photograph of a baby who is just 10 days old and a photograph of someone who's 40 years old, right? So when there is a proposal for marriage or matchmaking and they say send the boy's photo or the girl's photo, so you don't say the photo which is 10 days old. Just see how innocent our son is, how innocent our daughter is. She said, what photo you have sent? Whose photo is this? Well, our son. But when? When he was 10 days old. Will that be acceptable? So you cannot start a whole philosophical dialogue that it is the same person, why you are making a big hue and cry about it. And bodies keep changing and this and that. But at a practical level, the dealings will be affected. Therefore, the body keeps changing, but the person has not changed. The person has remained the same. So that's why we make the birth certificate of a child, but that certificate is valid even when the child becomes a young man, he grows old. In one sense, it is a different person. So how is it valid? Because intuitively we know something within has not changed. The world has changed, events have changed, the people have changed, everything has changed. But the person who's observing the events around from within, that person has not changed. So this is a very, very important principle. And we observe it, understand it, think about it. But we never try to connect this concept in our day-to-day activities in life. And we do not understand the impact of this understanding in our lifestyle, in our behavior, in our dealings, in our profession, because all of that requires a lot of guidance and understanding. But if you see our daily language we use and the kind of thought processes we go through, we are intuitively accepting, I am different from this body. There is someone within who is not changing even though the body is changing. No one can deny that he is intuitively accepting this in his dealings. It is very evident. Or another example I give, if somebody is, moving in a bicycle and he falls off the bicycle. So when he's fallen off the bicycle, what will be the first response? To take the bicycle to the repair shop or to take the man to the hospital? Generally ask this in, college, in students, and I make two students stand up and ask them, what you'll do? And they say, of course, come on. Don't insult me by asking such a question. Of course I'll take the man to the hospital. I say, no. Maybe because it's a bicycle, it's very cheap. What if he's riding a mobike, a Suzuki, and then he's trying to do some acrobatics and he falls off? And Suzuki is pretty costly. So what will you do? He said, of course, the man only. I said, okay, suppose he's riding a Toyota and that costs maybe 7 to 8 lakhs. And then maybe you don't know how much the body costs. So if you just check out, 65% or 70% of the body is all water. And you take all the other elements which are there in the body, like iron, magnesium, calcium, and all of these different elements, find out the rate in the market. You can even apply the BMC rates for water and then make a calculation how much total rate of the whole body comes. It comes to something like 150 rupees. And that was a few years back. Now market has gone down further. So it may be even less. One of our devotees were on a Jagannath Puri Yatra, and in Jagannath Puri the sea is very rough. So this boy was an expert swimmer. He went deep into the ocean. He went so deep that he couldn't come back. It was so difficult. The waves trapped him. And he kind of became very agitated, afraid, fearful. He was about to drown. But somehow his hand was above the water, and some lifeguard, by will of good fortune, noticed him, and the lifeguard jumped in. The lifeguard was a trained swimmer, and he could save him and brought him outside. So when he was brought outside, it took some half an hour for him to revive, and he vomited the water and this and that, and then he thanked the lifeguard, and he took out 150 rupees and gave him. The lifeguard said, hey, you should give me at least 1,000 rupees or 2,000 rupees, I have saved you. He said, cost of the body is 150 rupees. That was the logic. He said, what do you mean? And then he showed the book, And in the book, all the details Radheshyam Prabhu mentions in his, IYF book. So that was the logic he was using. But in one sense, it is a fact that the body costs only that much. But if someone says that in terms of commercial value, a Mercedes Benz, may cost 35 lakhs, 40 lakhs, 50 lakhs, and if a driver is driving that and crashes, so the whole world is discussing about the death of Lady Diana. Nobody is discussing about how that Mercedes got crashed. It was such a valuable car. So if someone starts a discussion like that, the whole world will jump on him and said, what kind of a low-class person is this? You're discussing the loss of a Mercedes Benz, where the world has lost, such an important personality. And say, no, only 150 rupees. And this is, lakhs of rupees. Or if there is an air crash, you won't see headline, Air India loses one major jumbo jet, major loss. And then whole report on the different aspects of the jumbo and how beautiful it was and how costly it was. And then last line says, by the way, 150 people were also supposed to be there. God knows where they are. If any newspaper reports like that, there will be dharna there and the newspaper has to close down. As soon as there is an air crash, 150 killed. Why? Because the value of a human being is considered much more than the value of any machine. Even though commercially, in terms of money, the machine may be much more costly. We are doing this every day. We are dealing with these principles daily. But we don't give a deep thought to it. And we are lost in the superficiality of our surroundings. And therefore we do not allow further introspection to help us come out of this whirlpool. But we cannot deny that all of us accept these facts deep within the core of our heart, but nobody has ever told us that these principles are scientifically described in the Gita, and these principles can help me come out of my frustrated existence. These principles can help me stop the anxieties and the stresses I am going through in my life. These principles can help me find meaning to my life. And therefore, the Gita comes to our rescue in this manner. Also, it is described that as far as the vehicle is concerned, the vehicle moves under the direction of the driver. So all of these examples show that there is some principle within the body which is different from the soul. The soul which is different from the body, and both two different separate identities exist. So this is as far as hypothesis is concerned. But how do I prove this hypothesis? So that comes to the third stage of experimentation. So when I perform an experiment, then that experiment should be able to prove. So you may say, okay, fine, there are certain examples you are showing that yes, it appears there is some entity within which is different from the body, but this is still theoretical, intellectual. But I want to have a concrete experience of this. So therefore, when I talk of experiment, there are certain things to be noted when it comes to experiment. What is that? Number one, the scientist who is proposing the hypothesis reserves the right to design his own experiment. He can design the nature of his experiment, he can design the apparatus, he can design the process. It is his own sweet prerogative. And number two, the experimental tools of one science or one field of science cannot be used in another field of science. Like for example, if I have to check my temperature of the body, I cannot use voltmeter. Voltmeter is a bona fide scientific apparatus. But when I am very hot, no doctor will say, "Jara voltage dekho kitna hai." And you are checking, high voltage. You have to step down. No, that doesn't make sense. Or you can't say, "Let us put an ammeter and check how many bacteria are flowing. The current, what is the current going through?" No, thermometer. So similarly, both are scientific apparatus, but their application is individual and unique. So similarly, when I say I am not the body, I am the soul, and this is my hypothesis and I have to prove with an experiment, then whoever proposes the hypothesis will also design the experimental apparatus. Like I have to check what is the acidity and basicity of a solution. Then I can't just be putting my finger, or I can't be just using some tube, but there is a pH scale and you have litmus paper, and with those tests which are specifically designed, you can identify, you can understand. So basically science means that there are certain very, very basic fixed criteria by which you can do that, and one who understands the principles clearly can also apply those principles properly. When we have only superficial understanding of these principles, then we cannot perform the experiment also properly. Therefore, the problem with India is most of us, we are very well equipped with modern scientific understanding. We know the jargon well, and we have also applied it quite well, and we have faith in it, and we have tried to perform those experiments very properly in our lives and seen some of the effects, and so we have faith in that. But we have never approached theology or the Gita or the Vedic literatures from a scientific point of view, and we always feel that it is left to individual's faith to decide whether he accepts it or not. The presence of electric current in a wire is not a matter of individual faith. It is a fact. There are apparatuses which are available by which you can test it. There are methods by which you can prove it and see it. Therefore, it is as real as the presence of you and me sitting here in this room. Similarly, when we want to check whether there is a soul within the body, there is a process by which we can do that. There is an experimental procedure. And when we do that, we can identify, yes, it is a fact. But because we have always been told that Gita means just puja part, Gita means something to be read when someone departs, some few shlokas you put in the obituary column, that much Gita you should know. Or Gita is the shlokas which are put in cremation ground. Every cremation ground will have Gita shlokas in India. Or before in Hindi movies they used to show in court cases, Gita pe haath rakhe, kaho, jo bhi kahunga, sach kahunga. That was the only introduction to Gita for most people in the beginning years, because there is no forum where Gita is discussed. Beta Gita kahan dekha? Oh, picture mein, villain ne rakha tha haath apna. That is the way Gita is. So, what exactly is the Gita? People are confused. Therefore, as I have described before, we need to have a proper, detailed, in-depth understanding of things. Otherwise, just superficial understanding will not help. We will fumble when events take place contrary to expectations in life. So only someone who is clinically sound can deal with all kinds of complicated cases when all of his concepts are challenged. And therefore, when we deal with Gita also, it is the same thing. Just like I give the story of Einstein. Albert Einstein had a driver who was very loyal to him, and he would take him around for different conferences. And at a certain point, Albert Einstein had developed a very powerful thesis, and he was making these presentations in all universities all over Germany. And this driver would drive him. And because it was such a critical, set of people he was speaking to, Einstein would practice in the back of his car aloud, and the driver would hear it every day. And by repeated hearing, the driver had kind of memorized practically the whole thesis because of having heard it 100, 200, 300 times. So one day Albert Einstein, as the driver was driving from one conference to another, Einstein commented, "I am feeling too tired today." And the driver said, "Maybe I can speak on your behalf." And Einstein said, "What? What do you mean?" He said, "Yeah, I've learned it." And Einstein said, "Speak something." And this fellow spoke one full chapter as it is. And Einstein was impressed. He said, "I'm so tired, my eyelids are just dropping. I can't make it today, you only go." So he exchanged the clothes, gave it to him, and then he went. And this was a small town, so people didn't notice, and he made this presentation. Driver made the whole presentation. And then there was a rousing applause. But what the driver didn't know that after the presentation there was question answer session. So the first scientist raised his hand and said, "Very good, everything is okay, but I have this major question about this." And then he started going on, and this question went on for 5 minutes. So as soon as this question was over, the driver nodded his head very gravely and said, "Very good question. But this question is so simple, even my driver sitting outside can answer this question." Call him in. So he had some knowledge which he had learned by rote, because he had just heard. So few things he could just repeat. But beyond that, he could not, because he did not know exactly how this process works. So therefore, most of us know a few things here and there, and we can put things together, and maybe we can even impress others that I am pretty religious. I am not a nobody in philosophy, I am somebody. And we can even mix a few shlokas here and there. Sarva dharman parityajya bhaktya mama bijanati. So people say, "Wow, what a shloka." But those who know Gita know that he has mixed, cut and paste 2 shlokas and put it together. So Indians are more concerned with impressing people with philosophy, or in parties or in some discussion where nothing important or critical is going on. But they do not understand that Gita is like a tool which can help us solve problems in life. Therefore, this discussion about body and soul is not just rhetoric, but it is the basic premise, the concept, which will act as a precursor to transform the way we think. Our attitudes will transform, and then we get certain solutions to real life problems which we are facing, like pain, suffering, anxiety, and unresolved questions. So therefore, as I said before, if I have a fracture in my hand and you look at it from outside, you just see a perfect hand. But you pass it through an X-ray machine, the X-ray reveals the crack. So Gita is like an X-ray machine. What appears to be beautiful, nice, attractive, enjoyable, you pass it through the Gita. Look through the vision of the Gita, and immediately you see, oh, yahi samsparshaja bhoga dukkha yonaya evate. Gita is saying this is the source of misery. This something attractive which you feel I can enjoy is actually going to be the cause of suffering. So therefore it's like an X-ray. It reveals things which we are not aware of. I may think I am this body. Pass it through the Gita, and Gita says, hey, you're not the body, you are the soul. There is a spark within which is the real you. You are feeding the car petrol, but you are not feeding the driver. And therefore there is frustration and suffering. Therefore, this Gita is in one sense a very mystical book, mainly because we have not tried to understand it in the proper system of what the great teachers in the past have taught us, from the right sources in the right manner, and therefore the confusions abound. So therefore, as far as the experimental procedure is concerned, the Gita recommends a certain experimental procedure. And that experimental procedure is known as mantra yoga. So all of us hear of mantra. And we all think, what is this mantra business?